Welcome back to another episode of Sal and Pal Stay at Home and Watch Movies. I'm here with my friend Touly. Say hi, Touly.
Hi, everyone.
And today we're going to be reviewing the Zack Snyder Justice League cut. And just a fair warning, there's going to be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. Determined to ensure Superman's ultimate sacrifice was not in vain, Bruce Wayne aligns forces with Diana Prince with plans to recruit a team of metahumans to protect the world from an approaching threat of catastrophic proportions. I'm going to start off saying that I really enjoyed this one versus the other one. This one seemed like it was a full version of the movie. I really enjoyed this cut and all the extra scenes that explains things that the other film left unanswered. Also, I like the change in color gradient that this cut had. It was a bit degraded in color, not as color popping as the other version, which made me take this movie a little bit more serious. Kind of a shade of yellowish tint to it. Feel like it was a post-apocalyptic movie. Also, the way they rearranged the introduction of the characters, I really enjoyed this. It felt more organic to me versus the other one. It felt like it was a bit rushed. I feel that it was just to cope with the length of the movie. It was pretty long, but in this way they could introduce the characters properly without skipping some of their backstory or why they joined. The other way that this movie made it feel like each part of the movie was in chapters, it made it feel like it was like a bookmarker for the movie. Since it was long, we were able to segment the movie and say, I left off here in case you did leave off for this movie, and watch it in a couple of sits versus one time that you just sat down and watched it. It was a perfect way of saying where you left off, bookmarker this, bookmarker that. As for the bad guy, I love the way Steppenwolf was made in this movie. It was rendered in a different way. It felt like it was a real bad guy versus just the other version, which was laughable. Also, I really like the lack of Superman's CG upper lip in this version. I mean, there was no way around it in the other one unless the actor had to shave off his mustache, but he couldn't. And I really like that Darkseid actually made an appearance in this at the end of the last fight. We also saw some of his minions side by side to him, but best of all was the backstory of the character Cyborg and also the epilogue. That was great. I enjoyed the whole way that Cyborg was sort of the glue that held the story together versus it was just individual stories just put out there. This guy really connected it and it felt like it was, like I said, a whole movie. I really enjoyed the epilogue, which was the best part of the movie, I want to say. It gave us this little hint that timelines were created, which I'm going to get to in a little bit. Now on to my cons. First of all, the very obvious, the length of the movie, 4 hours. It's kind of long. It's really long to just sit down at one time and digest this whole movie. I had to sit down multiple sections to really get the full effect. I really had to take an intermission, and I do believe that there is some scenes in this movie that really didn't need to be there. Also, some lines in this movie were cringe worthy. I'm going to pinpoint a scene when the Justice League are about to take Superman and revive him. There is some lines. The Cyborg replies to Wonder Woman when she says we should get dressed, and Cyborg says I'm always dressed. Or when the Flash is asking Aquaman which cap he should use. I mean, I know it's comedy with the Flash, but that seemed out of place. They were about to infiltrate the base and then Cyborg is saying that he's always dressed, and I'm like, where did that come from? What did that have to do with anything? It was kind of cringeworthy for me. And there's plenty of examples of other lines that kind of just didn't fit in the movie. Maybe it was some shots that he wanted to take, see if it worked, but it just didn't work for me. But I am really glad that Snyder did go with Lois saying you spoke versus the Whedon version, you smell good. And I want to say thank you for that. I really appreciate it. I didn't have to just cringe at that moment, so thank you. Also, as we're recording this podcast, MatPat over at Film Theory just uploaded a video where he hypothesizes that both films occur in a parallel universe due to Flash changing the past in the Flashpoint event. If anybody knows about that, he really makes a valid argument, which I want to really believe that it's real. I highly suggest you go and watch that video. Link is going to be in the description. It's a very well built video that talks about the whole two movies combined with other elements and how this might lead into the Flashpoint movie, because we know it's coming up. Flash is getting his own movie, so it would be really amazing for something like that to happen. And you know me, I'm a sucker for time travel paradoxes, and Flashpoint is one of the ultimate examples of that. So I guess with that, I'm going to pass it on to my friend Touly and see how he saw the movie and what grade he gave the movie.
So the first thing I want to say about this film is it is significantly better than the original version. version. Sal already mentioned some of the reasons, but I appreciate the amount of context that this movie provides that the original didn't. In particular, when it comes to some of the characters, such as The Flash, Barry Allen, and Cyborg. I mean, Flash, he got some more scenes and lines that would enable his character to get more fleshed out, but definitely Cyborg got represented in a more contextual sort of way so that we get to see his motivation, see who he was before he got his power, how he got his power, and how he was feeling throughout this process. I think of all the key players of the Justice League, I felt like Cyborg in the original version of this film, he was the least interesting one just because there wasn't enough on-time screen for him to sort of get me to buy into his character. So I really appreciated that this film did a whole lot more for me to come to realize not just who he is, but portray how significant of a role he played, especially towards the end of the film. So that to me is a very big plus. So I'll mention the darker tonality of the film in terms of the colorization, which to me makes sense from the perspective of the direction that Snyder intended this movie to head in. Definitely more, like I said, of a dark theme. The film was bloody, but of course not like gory bloody, but I felt like if you're gonna go in that direction, having the sort of shading filter that this film had versus the more colorful one in the original, to me that tends to work better, so you can really differentiate between the happy-go-lucky sort of superhero film versus the more serious tone that a film like this was striving to be. So to me that was also a great change that they made from the original. And some of the additional scenes that they had in this film, again, just on the same idea of Cyborg, it enabled me to see some of the more vulnerable sides of characters, or even the more aggressive and dangerous side of a character. In particular, I'm talking about Steppenwolf. I didn't really like the way he looked in the original, but the way they went about redesigning his appearance, I definitely like how he looks in this film a whole lot more than the original. And of course, some of the things that he got, especially when he invaded Diana's homeland, to me that really drove the message home about how dangerous of a guy this dude was versus how he was in the original. But I still feel that about halfway through the film onward, I feel like they could have probably elevated Steppenwolf's character a little bit more. I feel like most of the damage, or should I say the impact that I thought Steppenwolf would have on this film in terms of, him being this very villainous dude who we need to be fearful of, I felt like it was done in the first half. I mentioned the invasion of Diana's homeland. I feel like that's where he really set the tone about the sort of character he was. But about like halfway through the film, I felt like his character didn't go any beyond what it was already shown. So maybe to me as a con, I wish he would have done something that would have gave me that sort of feeling like, all right, this dude can do stuff that he was just holding back on until he had to play his trump card or something. I did like the final confrontation though that he had with the Justice League, but I guess this is more about the Justice League versus him, because he was just like a ragdoll when everybody was able to team up. Of course, this is when Superman showed up, but I just like seeing the Justice League work together as a team because they're a team. So seeing them work together to take down Steppenwolf, that was awesome, because in the original, I believe, and I didn't quite understand why as well. Why would you go against a guy like that, one at a time versus being able to do it as a team? So I'm glad that this movie maybe recognized that and went ahead and had everybody sort of work together to take down Steppenwolf. Yeah, like I really appreciated character development, the tonality of the film, and the choreography of some of the fights, as I mentioned, that final one with Steppenwolf. I would say my favorite scene of the film is when Flash had to revert time in order to rescue everyone. And that scene where you saw Superman being reanimated, that was like, whoa, I did not expect him to kind of go as far as that. So that really contributed to the moment where Flash had to, as he said, go beyond the speed of light in order to bring everything back to where it was. So definitely that to me was the highlight of the film for me, and it really gave Barry Allen the spotlight of the film. Like, I know the whole plan was to have Cyborg be the key player where he had to disconfigure the cubes, but to me, Flash and the way they went about creating that scene with slow-mo with Flash, but just the visual there was like so cool to me with everything being brought back together. Now for the con, definitely the runtime. I was definitely feeling it about halfway through the film. I was starting to lose focus, and I could attribute that to reasons. Again, me just wanting to know how far I was into the film. Maybe that's in correlation to me already seeing the original and me wanting to just know what's going to happen next in relationship to some of the new content in this film. I wanted to get to like the parts that really made me feel like this film deserved the sort of recreation that, Snyder intended this film to have. So yeah, about the halfway point, I was starting to think to myself, okay, I kind of already saw this, but yeah, it's cool. I seen these changes too. That's nice. But for a 4-hour film, let's get it going, guys. Let's go. And then also, Sal mentioned the sort of transitions they have with like splitting the movie into multiple parts. I'm not accustomed to watching films like that because I like seeing, for the most part, a movie that is able to smoothly transition from one scene to the next. Because I knew that movie like this was so long, I kind of wanted to just stop watching the film at some point and come back to it later, but I managed to sit through it. I definitely felt that they could have cut the runtime of the film down maybe by half an hour or so. There were definitely scenes that I felt wasn't necessary. I don't know why it made it into the film other than to maybe give characters a sort of moment in the spotlight. For example, when those ladies started singing for Aquaman when he was gonna take off, that moment kind of dragged for me. If that scene did not exist, it would not made a difference for me whatsoever. But it is in the film and I had to sit through that singing. And I'm not saying that the singing or anything was bad, but I'm just saying like the purpose that that moment served didn't do anything for me. Stuff like that I feel like could have been left out in the film. And then Sal mentioned that sort of like epilogue that sort of indicates that there are various timelines or the sort of thing that happened based on Bruce Wayne's vision or nightmare that he said he's been having. It was cool seeing that. The way he interacted with Joker, that was very intense. But I do have a problem with that because it implies that there could be a next film. And if there is, it's going to have to follow what they have said there. Otherwise, to me, it felt like that scene altogether was not necessary if you're not going to follow through. If that scene was just to serve an idea of this is what would have happened if, say, Superman really went berserk because something happened to Lois, then okay, sure. In like the DC universe or Marvel universe or whatever, yes, there are multiple timelines going on. In general, I'm a believer of that. But for this film to go as far as to actually show us potentially these multiple timelines, I feel like if they're going to show it, they're going to need to follow up on it in like a future film or something. Otherwise, if they don't, then I would have been okay with them not showing that scene too. As much as I said, liked the interaction between Batman and Joker. Which also brings me to Lois. They kept on saying throughout the film that Lois was the key. Although that's fine and dandy, I did not like Lois's character in this film. I understand that she was going through a hard time and trying to recover from her state of sadness, of loss, of Superman. But because of that, I felt like she just didn't really offer me anything other than being this character who we just saw throughout the film until she finally met Superman. Again, you know, I'm supposed to be this important character somehow because the movie told me that I'm the key to everything, but I'm just here like soaking and stuff. And again, I understand why she is doing what she is, but I felt like the way she was portrayed in relation to how important of a character she is, to me, it didn't feel like she was as important as they make it seem to be. That's just my take on it. And then last but not least, I would like to point out one of my least favorite scenes of this film because it's a very weak depiction of a character. It's the scene where everybody's trying to take down Superman when he was revived. I'm going to mention Batman in particular because for a character like him who doesn't have superpower but relies more on his gadgets and his wits, for him to just like openly approach Superman the way he did, he could have been easily killed. I know he was working with Wonder Woman to create those armbands or whatever that would help deflect certain abilities, but I wish they would have been able to have Batman somehow gain an advantage in that moment but still get overcome by Superman's will and power, whether Batman have infused kryptonite weapons as done in a prior movie or just something to show that he was able to outsmart Superman for a bit but still got overpowered. So for me, it seemed like that really undermined the sort of character that Batman should be, and I wish they would have done a better job there because Batman is one of my favorite characters in the DC universe because again, being a character who is not superpowered bound but relies more on his wits and his gadgets and stuff like that. But to my overall impression of the film, like I said, I do like it a whole lot more than the original. If only the movie wasn't as long as it is, I would say that would be my biggest complaint. So I would say my score of the film is a 7 out of 10. I wouldn't still say it's like the best or one of the best superhero films I've seen, but it's definitely better than the original and good enough to sit through if you're able to do it in one sitting, of course, with it being a 4-hour film, or you could just consume it in chunks as the movie has already separated the scenes for you.
I totally agree with you. I really am on board with you that the movie is pretty long. There is some scenes like you mentioned, especially that singing scenes with the girl and she grabbed the sweater, sniffed it. I could have totally done without that. It didn't add anything to the movie. It just made it kind of creepy. Yes, the movie, it's better than the other one, but there's some things that we could have done without. Like you said, the reason they said Lois was key was I'm thinking they're setting up Flashpoint. And in Flashpoint is the alternate diversion timeline of this film. The epilogue, if we go that route, is the nightmare route. So with that, still, like you said, if they don't bring out the Flashpoint movie, then it's a total waste of mentioning it. But I do feel strongly that that's a little hint that we're going to see the Flashpoint flashpoint, and somehow it's going to tie into the Justice League movie. So for me, this movie, like Touly said, it was long, but overall it was enjoyable. I'm going to give it a solid 8 out of 10. Highly recommend people who saw the other one to watch this one, just so you get a better taste in your mouth. And for people who haven't seen any, just watch this one, like digest it slowly. Don't sit for 4 hours. I mean, if you want to, go for it, but it's pretty long just to sit there and watch a movie for 4 hours and comprehend everything you watched. So I guess that does it for this review of Justice League. Please join us next time where we're going to review Mortal Kombat from 2021.
Take whatever trophies you desire, but their souls are mine.
Silence!
I've come to claim your world. You're too late, Raiden.
Please like, comment, and subscribe. You can find our social media links below. And like always, keep watching movies.